Selling a home has always been stressful, right? But in 2025, things have changed and the old ways of doing things don't always work anymore. So, in today's video, we're going to talk about what's new in the home selling game this year, why deals are happening faster, and why realtors are falling behind tech. The sneaky tricks some real estate agents use, and how you can avoid losing thousands of dollars. The biggest challenges when selling a home, and how to make sure your sale goes as smoothly as possible. Whether you're getting ready to sell your home, or just want to stay in the know, stick with us. We're breaking it all down for you. So, Mike decides to sell his home and hires a realtor, signs a standard contract with a 5.5% commission. But guess what? The agent couldn't sell the place fast enough, and Mike's getting frustrated. Eventually, Mike takes things into his own hands and finds a buyer, friends of his friends. They work out a deal, everything seems great, and it looks like the sale is going smoothly. But then, when Mike gets the final closing documents, he's hit with a shock. He sees that he still has to pay that full 5.5% commission over $20,000. Even though the buyer came without an agent, the money is still going somewhere. Here's the thing, when Mike signed with his agent, he didn't realize that the commission didn't change if the buyer didn't have an agent. So, how it usually works is, around 3% goes to the seller's agent and 3% goes to the buyer's agent, but since the buyer didn't have an agent, the contract didn't account for that, and Mike's agent still took the full commission. It's a little loophole that a lot of people don't notice when they sign. Here's how sellers can avoid getting burned. Talk it through with your agent. Before you sign anything, make sure you're clear on what happens if the buyer shows up without an agent. Negotiate the commission. You can ask to adjust the commission if the buyer doesn't have an agent. Consider flat fee listing services. Instead of going through a traditional agent, you can use platforms that charge a flat fee for listing your home. Mike definitely learned his lesson. Next time, he made sure to talk things through with his agent and ended up saving himself at least $20,000. Alright, now that we've covered some of the basics, let's talk about something that could really mess with your sale: dual agency. So here's the deal. Dual agency happens when the same agent represents both the seller and the buyer in a transaction. Basically, the same person is trying to make sure both sides are happy. Sounds a little strange, right? You'd think each side would want their own agent fighting for their best interests, but with dual agency, one agent is doing both jobs. And how does this impact things like commission? Normally, the commission gets split between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. But with dual agency, the same agent takes the full commission. On one hand, it might seem like it's easier, one agent, one deal, but that means there's less incentive for the agent to get the best price for you. And here's where it can get tricky. Since the agent is trying to please both the seller and the buyer, they can't really give their full attention to either side. This means the seller might not get the highest possible offer, or the buyer might feel like they didn't get a fair deal. The agent's motivation could shift from getting the best deal to just getting the deal done. The bottom line, while it might look like a simple solution, dual agency can cause some real problems. You need to be aware of the risks involved so you don't end up with a situation that doesn't work out for you. Now, let's dive into how you can protect yourself from these kinds of situations and make sure you're getting the best deal possible. Alright, moving on to something that's been making waves lately: changes to commission structures. There have been some big shifts in how commissions are handled after a series of lawsuits and legal battles that have gone down. Essentially, these lawsuits challenged the traditional way commissions were paid, especially when it came to who pays the buyer's agent. Before, it was pretty common for the seller to pay both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. But now, things are starting to change, with some legal pressure to move away from that model. For sellers, this could be a game changer. It could mean you'll see fewer agents willing to take on a listing unless there's a solid commission structure in place that benefits them. Sellers might have to negotiate commission percentages up front with their agent, and that's something you should be aware of. So, how can sellers prepare for these changes and avoid any nasty surprises? Well, first off, talk about commissions early on. Make sure both you and your agent are on the same page about what's expected. Understand what the total commission will be and if there's any chance it'll change down the road. Second, ask about any extra fees. Sometimes there are hidden costs like marketing fees, admin fees, or additional charges for things like hosting open houses. Always ask what's included and make sure you're not going to get hit with unexpected costs when it's time to close the deal. Now, these can be a real pain because sometimes agents will sneak in services that you don't even need. For example, you might find that you're being charged for a $1,000 3D home tour and marketing fees. Sounds fancy, right? But is it really necessary? And hey, speaking of avoiding unnecessary fees and headaches, if you're looking for a fast, hassle-free sale, I can help. I'm a cash buyer, and I specialize in buying homes as is, whether they need repairs, renovations, or they're just a regular house you want to sell quickly. No agent commissions, no closing costs, no waiting around for months. Just a straightforward cash offer and a smooth closing on your timeline. Over the past year alone, I've bought 53 homes all across the US. It's what I do. I buy properties and rent them out. So if you're thinking about selling and want a fast, fair cash offer, reach out. I've left a link to the website in the description. Click it, fill out a short form, and one of our team member will get in touch with you. Now, whether you sell to a cash buyer like me or go the traditional route with an agent, understanding commissions is key because that's where a lot of sellers accidentally lose money. One of the biggest headaches? What happens when the buyer doesn't have an agent? You'd think that means paying less in commissions, right? Well, not always. See, traditionally, the seller pays both agents' commissions, the listing agent and the buyer's agent. But what happens when the buyer doesn't have an agent? Does the seller still pay the full commission? Does the listing agent keep the entire amount? This is where things get tricky and a lot of sellers get caught off guard. One common issue is that some listing agents won't lower their commission even if there's no buyer's agent involved. They'll just pocket the full amount, leaving the seller paying the same total fee for half the work. And if you don't catch it, you could be losing thousands without even realizing it. Another problem? Ambiguous contract terms. Some agreements don't clearly state what happens if there's no buyer's agent, which means sellers assume they're paying less, only to get hit with the full commission anyway. So, how do you protect yourself? First, go over your listing agreement carefully. Make sure there's a clear breakdown of how commissions are handled if the buyer comes without an agent. Second, negotiate up front. If there's no buyer's agent, your agent shouldn't be walking away with double commission unless that was explicitly agreed upon. And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions. If something doesn't add up, get it clarified before you sign anything. Because once that contract is locked in, changing commission terms gets a whole lot harder. Let me tell you about Lisa, a homeowner who learned the hard way why it's so important to choose the right agent. Lisa was in a hurry to sell. She found an agent who promised a quick sale at a great price, so she signed the contract without thinking twice. But here's where things went wrong. First, the agent barely marketed the house. No proper listing photos, no advertising, just a basic online post and a sign in the yard. Weeks passed and nothing happened. Then, when offers finally started coming in, the agent pushed Lisa to accept a much lower one, saying it was the best she'd get. Lisa later found out that the buyer was the agent's wife. Yeah, you heard that right. The agent was secretly buying homes through his wife, underpricing them so he could keep the profit himself. By doing this over and over, he was basically stealing equity from honest homeowners who trusted him. And it didn't stop there. At closing, Lisa saw a bunch of extra fees she never agreed to, mystery marketing costs, higher commission rates, and even a transaction fee she had no idea existed. By the time the sale was done, she'd lost thousands of dollars she could have kept. And here's the craziest part. I actually saw Lisa's contract myself. And let me tell you, I was shocked. The way it was written, it was like a blueprint for stealing from sellers. I honestly thought, how is this even legal? I mean, for stuff like this, people should be going to jail. So, what could Lisa have done differently? Asked more questions up front. She should have made sure the agent had a solid marketing plan, not just empty promises. Checked the contract carefully. Those hidden fees? They were right there in the fine print. Got a second opinion. If she had spoken to another agent, she might have realized her home was worth more and avoided being lowballed. The lesson here? Not all agents have your best interests at heart. Some are straight up running scams to get rich at your expense. So before you sign anything, make sure you know exactly who's representing you and what they're really getting out of the deal. Alright, so we've covered a lot of ground with commissions and the hidden costs that can come up. Now let's talk about something that can really mess up your sale, and that's loan issues. Here's the deal. Buyers might seem solid on paper, but just because they've been pre-approved doesn't mean the loan is guaranteed to go through. That pre-approval letter doesn't always tell the whole story. Imagine this. You've got an offer for a great price and everything seems perfect. But once you hit that final stretch, suddenly the loan falls through. It's a huge disappointment, and it happens more often than you might think. So, what can go wrong? Well, for starters, there's a big difference between being pre-qualified and pre-approved. Pre-qualification is just a quick estimate from the lender, and pre-approval, that's when the lender has actually checked the buyer's credit and financials, and they're confident they can approve the loan. If a buyer only has a pre-qualification letter, don't count on it. It's kind of like buying a car without a test drive. You don't know for sure if it's going to work until you take it out for a spin. And then there's the loan type. Not all loans are the same, and some come with more hoops to jump through than others. If the buyer's using an FHA or VA loan, things can get tricky. These loans require certain conditions, and if your house doesn't meet them, like if there's a roof leak or peeling paint, the deal can fall apart. But the real kicker is what's called the debt-to-income ratio. This is where a buyer's finances get checked again right before closing, and if anything changes, like they buy a car or open a new credit card, the lender could pull the plug on the loan, and your deal could be gone in a flash. So, to make sure your sale doesn't get derailed, it's important to understand the loan process and make sure your buyer is truly financially solid. The more you know about the financing side, the better you can protect yourself from unexpected issues that could cost you time and money. So now you know what to watch out for when selling your home, from hidden commission costs to loan issues that can totally mess up a deal. But if you want to skip all the stress, headaches, and extra costs, I've got a solution for you. If you're looking to sell your home fast for cash and without all the usual hassle, I'm here to help. I buy homes as is, so no need for repairs or dealing with agents. Just a quick, straightforward process that puts cash in your hands fast. If you're ready to sell and want to avoid all the headaches, just head over to my website and fill out the form. We'll take care of the rest, so you can move on with your life. No commissions, no closing costs, just a simple cash offer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.